Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the clubhouse. This is Don Swenson. I am flying solo tonight while my better half, Sam Seitels, is out on vacation. I got an opportunity to speak with Michael Cagno, the director of the Noyes Museum, somebody I consider a friend and someone I respect greatly. We got a chance to talk a lot about his journey, his philosophy on the arts, his commitment to community and accessibility through the arts, and I want to just get to it. So, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Cagno. That's a good question. What are we going to talk about? I don't know. Welcome, Mike Cagno. Welcome to the clubhouse.
Thank you.
I'm used to Sam carrying the burden of most of the conversation. I'm a very good listener when it comes to this, but I figured we know each other pretty well. It just this is like coffee over at Casciano's, except no coffee and it's nighttime.
No, and you got some big shoes to fill without Sam in the room. So
I know. I'm very
wish you
nervous.
luck.
Thanks. I'm gonna need it. But I think it's been a long time coming to get you on the podcast. I mean, you've been a pretty big supporter of it from the beginning, and supporter of Art Club since the very beginning as well. I mean, you're probably one of the first people to know that Art Club was actually a thing. So
I Googled it. It was real.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for it to become a thing too. But yeah, I thought this would be a good opportunity to share a little bit about you and like all the work. Like, I don't know anybody who moves around more than you do. Like, you seem to be having your hands into like communities all over the place, like lifting up arts organizations, creating community growth through the arts. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to talk about. Like, how did you get involved with that to begin with?
You know, it's funny because 25 years ago when I started this career, I was working on my master's degree at Seton Hall University in museum management. Living in Vineland, I was commuting 3 nights a week for 3 years to Seton Hall up the Parkway and the Turnpike. Mm-hmm. And I saw an ad in the paper, the Daily Journal back then, that Millville wanted to do this crazy idea of an arts district. And they're having a meeting, and I went. And I was halfway through my master's program, and they want to create this whole arts district, use the arts as a revitalization tool, a catalyst to bring back the downtown, which has been decimated by the closing of factories, the glass factories, and outsourcing everything. So I went to the Millville Library, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool. This would be a cool project to get involved in as I start working on my thesis in using the arts as a revitalization tool." So it was meant to be, and I started back in 2000, helping to start the art district in Millville, and it's been an exciting, fun ride ever since.
Nice. How did you come from? Like, Rowan is where you got your BFA?
Yeah, so I Rowan College and graduated Rowan University. First graduating class at Rowan University. I had a degree in painting and art history. I knew how to paint. I knew my art history. But I also like to eat steak, and I like to drink wine. So being a starving artist wasn't in the cards for me. And talking to my mentors, my professors at the university, they said, why don't you go into the business side of it all? And I applied for Seton Hall University in the arts management side, got accepted, and after a 3-year journey with them and growing more mentorship, it's nice because I am still a practicing artist, but I have this tenacity to balance both sides of the brains. And sometimes it's a plague. They conflict with each other quite regularly, being the creative, but also understanding the spreadsheets, the budgets.
Yeah.
And the whole, business models on how to make an operation work.
There's got to be some benefit to that as well. Like, you get to talk to both sides of the room and be, I don't know, an interpreter of sorts.
No, absolutely. Artists have their own unique language. Businesses, spreadsheets, they have their own unique languages, and being able to transcribe between the two spaces is really cool, because you try to find that balanced mutual setting in which both can understand the other person and then engage in bringing their best assets forward in order to accomplish the mission. And whether it's from creating a final piece, a public work, or developing a new program and writing a grant, everybody wins.
Yeah. Now, how long have you been, like, you seem to understand grants pretty well and know how to, I don't know, get through those documents.
Dabble a little bit.
Like how did you get, like, how did you jump in there and start, I don't know, navigating those
It is the same, excuse me, it's the same as negotiating when you apply for, as an artist, apply for an exhibition or a show or a gallery. Embrace rejection.
Okay.
Same philosophy. Writing grants, there is no real secret sauce to it. A lot of it's just following the directions to the T, and give them exactly what they want. Be realistic, transparent, and be dynamic about what it is that they're asking and trying to match their particular audience, and then how it coalesces with your mission without hyperinflating things. Right. And in the beginning, rejected a lot for grants. It's interesting, when I started helped start the art district, and I was the first executive director for the Riverfront Arts Center. Gave me a fancy title, but I wasn't paid for that position, and I worked for free as a director for a year and a half until I got my first grant from the State Council of the Arts, a staffing grant, and that established our paying me to run operations, and took a year and a half of a lot of rejections and lessons learned.
Yeah. Is there anything that came out of that felt like that was probably the hardest lesson learned?
Is with
from those early days?
You know what? Besides rebase injection, which I still do, my batting average right now for grants is about a 500.
Okay.
In the major leagues, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But I still get disappointed. I just got rejected last week on another grant. I applied for the third time. Don't know if I'll apply again, but I may. But I think resiliency is the biggest takeaway. Is when you're passionate about something, which I'm passionate about the arts, and that's why I play in these different arenas, is because there's an opportunity to bring the arts into some particular stakeholder group for a particular objective, and by doing that, especially in the grants, when you do get a grant, it is so rewarding, because then the stakeholders benefit, your audience benefits, the organization benefits, and again, I look at it as, where can I leverage capacity and win-wins with everybody involved? Well,
I thought that was interesting. Like, I don't mean to cut you off, but like, especially with this Access to Art program that I think you're still running, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that I thought that was a really great way, speaking of capacity, is to get so many different organizations helping achieve that goal, so like now, instead of you just trying to create all of this programming internally, you have this opportunity to spread these programs throughout Atlantic, and is it just Atlantic?
Just Atlantic County right now. It's been an exciting ride with Atlantic Center for Independent Living. They gave us a partnership, really sponsoring programs this past August. And they said, hey, how can you use the arts to make it much more accessible and inclusive for individuals with disabilities? And the Noyes Museum has always, in an ad hoc way, done programming for individuals with disabilities. We've always worked with the ARC of Atlantic County and We've done things with pilot services, but very ad hoc way. When this opportunity came along in August, it was a way to really formalize it and brand it, to make art accessible to everybody, regardless of your one's ability. And so we called it Access to Art, and it keeps it much more open-ended. Because of our existing partnerships, we were able already and quickly to leverage those and say, all right, we got this program, we have some funds, we want to do more and have it regular. And then the other cool thing was having conversations with some of my colleagues in the field and at schools. All right, where are some pockets that we're not hitting that we can leverage some interest that you have out there? And it's just, matching everything up. And this past fall, we did 105 workshops across organizations, 13 partners, many of which in Hamilton, that you're familiar with. The Art Club and Hamilton Family Success Center, Allies in Caring.
Right. Piney Hollow. Hamilton Art Center. And on top of ARC and pilot services, and then working with psychotherapists and art therapists as well, working with neurodivergent. Also, too, working with, 1 in 4 individuals have a disability. And we all focus on individuals with disabilities that are seen disabilities, right? Whether it be an impairment, a visual impairment, or a gross motor skill impairment. But also, too, looking at the mental health crisis that we're in, the emotional crisis that we're in, and using the arts for individuals with depression and anxiety, teenagers and older active adults as well. So, you just did a program. Was it at the Arts Garage for was it grief, or there was like a painting or drawing?
It's one of the nice things about partnerships and collaborations is success breeds success. And when you start to see other organizations reaching out to and validating what you do, because sometimes you get so far in the forest, you're like, oh God, am I doing the right thing? Is this working? And they say, we love what you guys are doing. How do we be a part of it? And we do this grief workshop for individuals who have lost somebody, and using the arts as part of that healing mantra and a way to cope and to relieve stress, but also not just in the visual arts. We're also playing in the space of literary arts and music as art therapy as well. So a lot of people think, and you've been in this for a long time too, that the arts are just about, trying to paint this or sculpt that, but it goes so far beyond, so far beyond that, and what it does to the soul and how it heals somebody.
Well, it's interesting, and I don't know if like I come from like a theater background originally, but like with the fine arts network that's down in this area, I don't know if I've experienced in any other career path that I've chosen such community. So many people who are just like, oh, what are you doing? How can I help?
Right.
And that's really like such a special thing. Do you think that it's serendipity, kismet, whatever, or do you think it's because of the relationships that have been nurtured over the last 10, 15 years?
Oh, it's definitely because of the relationships nurtured, because at the end of the day, you got to develop that trust. Relationships are all built on trust. And as you know, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen at a fast food drive-through mentality. It takes years of developing that trust. And once that's in place and it starts to grow and attract, like I said before, other relationships, it magnifies, quickly. And I think the rewarding part of it, it magnifies organically, which provides this sense of authenticity and having, collaborations and partners, and again, everybody benefits. It's so cool. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
Making a difference.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know you're doing really well without Sam, by the way.
Thanks. I have him sitting on my shoulder over here.
He probably has a place bugged. Make sure we're doing all right.
Yeah. He made sure that I let him know when I was coming by so that they didn't see strangers on the cameras around.
He's got the blink cameras activated.
besides your work, well, actually, there's been a journey that the Noyes Museum has taken too. So like let's touch on that, because I remember when it was back over by Forsyth, and then it moved to that small shop on 2nd Street, and then over to Kramer Hall. So like, what was that journey like? And when did you get on that train?
Yeah, that's a train. It's a train, a roller coaster. So, so I was a director for 6 years down in Millville, right? And I was very happy and content. We're having a lot of fun, really growing in downtown and the arts as a catalyst for that redevelopment, right? Not just for bringing in other art organizations, but restaurants and boutiques and things like that, changing the landscape of the downtown. And the Gay Walling was the executive director at the time of the Noyes, and she reached out and she said, "Let's go have lunch." I'm like, "All right, that's cool." And she said, I'm retiring." I'm like, "Well, that's nice. That's good. Good luck." And she said, "I want you to apply for the position." I said, "Well, I don't want to apply. I'm very happy here in Millville." And so I said, "All right, well, let me go and check it out." And I walked into an interview with them, and I was just myself. And that's, I'm very, you know me long enough. I'm very direct up front. Yeah. And I walked in there. They asked a lot of questions. I gave them my honest assessment on things. I walked out of there. I called my wife up, and she says, how'd it go? And I'm like, well, they either really like me or they think I'm a big jerk. But I don't anticipate a phone call back. And they called back and offered me a position, and one that I couldn't refuse. It was a nice, step up in running, going from an art center to an art museum.
Right.
And when I came on board in 2006 at the Noyes, it was having some troubles, financial troubles. And it was also, there was a sense of community, but it was a little bit forced. And also, too, you said earlier, in a Forsyth Wildlife Refuge, you're out in the middle of a bird sanctuary. Yeah. There's no public transportation. You're not surrounded, and you're not surrounded by a lot of population. So people have to know that you're there.
Right.
And that's when we opened up the Arts Garage in Atlantic City in 2013, and trying to go where the people were at as well. And one of the things that always stuck with me over the last number of years is I was up running a conference down in D.C., and Lonnie Bunch is now the head of the whole Smithsonian, but he founded the African American Museum down in the mall in D.C., and he said at a conference, he said, art museums can no longer think of themselves as community centers, but the center of the community. And that was like, wow, that's what we're doing, So being ingrained in Atlantic City, and then we opened up in Hamilton. We had a retail shop, and then Kramer Hall came on board with Stockton, opened up a instructional site. Again, it's just really the powers and let things play out with relationships and partnerships, and looking at ways of working with the different types of communities. And Hamilton, as you know, is very different than Atlantic City.
Sure.
And our exhibits and our programs, there's some similarities, but we are very niche and targeted, and understanding the needs and the community's drive what it is that we're doing.
Now, I love what the Arts Garage seems to be like growing into. Like it's always been like a cool space since I've started going there, with the little studios and gallery spaces and stuff. But it really seems that sense of community is growing within the center with, like Herman and Amanda and other artists moving in and, doing, wanting to use that space for the community.
Right. Yeah. I'm really appreciative that you picked up on that, because it's taken some time to get to that point. You open up a arts incubator space. We curate gallery spaces there. You got the African American Museum, headed up by Ralph Hunter, walking encyclopedia, that man. We've had we have 9 studios that we rent out. Yeah. They have 24-hour access, and we're open to the public Wednesday through Sunday. And we still have 4 of the original 9 tenants. Wow. After all these years. And some moved on because, they need bigger spaces. Others moved on. It's at the end of the day, it's still a business. Yeah. We can romanticize it all we want of, being in the studio by candlelight and, drinking wine, listening to jazz and stuff, but you still have to treat it like a business. And it's taken a number of years to just get that right mix of personalities and artists that develop that chemistry, and where they all really start to feed off of each other. It's like you said, having Amanda and Herman in there helps with that. Having Ralph in there, and Ron Cohen in there, who's been there since the beginning.
Forever,
It's a nice family, it really is.
Yeah. Where do you see, I guess, programming continuing at the Arts Center, at the Arts Garage?
That's a good question. I can tell you, a lot of our biggest challenge is, when you think of the Noyes Museum, people associate just that Kramer Hall. Some people associate just that the Arts Garage, right? We are at both of those locations. We do a lot of things with main campus at the university at Stockton, the Atlantic City campus. We still have a gallery space at Seaview at the resort, Manahawkin instructional site. We go into the community with various partners. So our business model has ebbed and flowed over the last, and I think this goes back to what you said earlier about the train ride. You have to adapt and pivot. And our business model has changed quite a few times. And I think we're finally hitting stride of, and keeping, again, what Lonnie Bunch was saying in the back of my head of, hey, let's, if the community's not coming to us, we go to the community.
Yeah.
So having all of these different sites and having the ability to be nimble and flexible and going to the people has been really, really cool. And also, too, think about the demographics and how they're changing in the area. Look what's going on here in Hamilton. And
sure.
Think about Atlantic City. I got Texas Avenue School down the street, 30 languages spoken in that school. All walks of life coming in. And, and everybody has an idea. And when people have a solid idea and a plan, we'll jump right on board. So our biggest challenge is not understanding the word no.
So speaking about going into the community, talk to me about the whole Ducktown project. Like, I know there's like community garden space and all that. Like, how did that manifest?
Yeah, that's I ask myself that every day. How did I get involved in this thing? Again, this really comes back to that developing a sense of community, right?
Yeah.
So Stockton opened up their Atlantic City campus, right? Their anchor institution. Anchor institution, more than just words, is about supporting the community, not just economically, but socially, educationally, all the way down to public safety, all the way down to thinking about initiatives, for things like workforce development and economic development. And, we take that very seriously. Stockton takes Anchor Institution very seriously in Atlantic City. And in 2019, a group of residents and business owners in Ducktown started getting together. This was right before, COVID and stuff, and thinking about how can we, with our little neighborhood in Atlantic City of 48 blocks, come together as residents and business owners to improve, right? And so we had a meet. We met at the Arts Garage. We met at Dante Hall. And again, we're an art museum, and we are just as responsible for our constituents in the community as we are elsewhere. And from that, we formalized and created a community development corporation in 2021. Received a number of grants for economic development, home facades, home rehabs, home buying programs, community gardens that the residents decide on what they want to have planted, because they're the ones who are going to be working in there and harvesting and bringing it to the table. When you do that, and you have that authenticity behind it, it really starts to transform the neighborhood. And it's mindful, it takes time.
Yeah.
And that ebb and flows as well over the years. But now there's 4 CDCs in Atlantic City, and we're all working together, each doing our part. We share some of the same challenges, and some challenges we are solely unique to our particular demographic or our land area. But we all, again, from a grassroots effort, see how coming together from different places and through different lenses can really make an impact on what's going on in Atlantic City.
What do you think for communities out there that are just starting off trying to create that type of community? And how do I phrase this? What do you think are the biggest challenges for those communities, and how would you, I mean, I guess every community is different, but how would you suggest approaching those situations, those difficulties.
Yeah, you're right. Every community is different, but at the end of the day, they all are wanting the same thing. They want to be heard, right? And providing that space where you can listen, providing that space where there's safety and listening to what they have to say, not judging, judge-free zone, and then from that figure out, and develop strategies and tactics to implement that with intentionality, but at the same time, hold everybody accountable.
Yeah.
Hold, and I weigh a volunteer at the very same level as I do my staff. That accountability is no less just because they're a volunteer. Community residents who are out there volunteering, they need to be held accountable just as much as we do with the fiduciary funds. And when you have accountability and you have that sense of that lens and understanding and that sense of empathy as well, it's all based, again, I said earlier, it's relationships, and trust. And you're going to make mistakes along the way. You own up to it, screw this up, and move on to the next thing and pivot,
I'm starting to see this. I don't know. It seems like
a bad idea doing a podcast with me.
No, this is great. I like this. I mean, I can spend 2 hours talking to you like this. Like this is awesome for me. But I'm starting to see a shift, and I don't know if it's just me, just where I'm looking, but there seems to be a shift in some of the communities that I've had, the privilege to go into, of it moving from these, that the arts are defined specifically by an anchor organization, and it's moving into more of what is being created as the community, as a whole, and not just an organization.
Right.
Are you seeing that same thing happening?
I am. I think it's like everything else. Don, you got to have a balanced approach to it. So you do need, a couple organizations. I mean, look what we're doing. What we're doing in Hamilton. Right?
Yeah.
You got the Noyes, you got the art club, Hamilton Art Center, you go theater, Main Street, Kramer Hall. So when you have organizations involved, you have some type of structure, you have some funding, right, which is always important. But you have a level of maturity of understanding what the arts can do, and then working with the community, your external stakeholders, and bringing them into the mix. And then once they grab ownership of it, then it's like they're initiating, they're coming up with the ideas, and you can, as an organization, take more of a back seat and let them flourish and fly and create things. And you look at look at what comes to mind with this is think about Jim Bacon and Andrea, right? What they're doing with poetry and writing and attracting English audiences and Spanish audiences. Yeah, you support them, I support them, but now it's like, wow, they're just taking it on their own life and going with it.
Right. I don't want to necessarily. Let's see if I want to do that. See, this is where I run into the problems because I've got so many things going on in my head. I'm like, which do we zig or zag? But let's add on to that because I think bringing up Jim and Andrea is a great segue into Hamilton to a certain degree. Is like we have such a large Spanish-speaking population here. I think we're probably approaching close to 30% of the population at this point. I know when I first started started the relationship with Main Street Hamilton, I think was like 25%, but that number has grown significantly in the last 5 to 6 years. So I still feel that there's a bit of a disconnect between the English and the Spanish-speaking population, and trying to bridge that gap is sometimes challenging.
Right.
Whether it be, I don't know if it's always necessarily because of the language gap as much as finding a method of communication that will transcend language.
Right. Right.
So when approaching different organizations or different communities of people, like, how do you, I guess personally, how do you approach that organization to come to where they are instead of inviting them to where you are? Because that doesn't seem to ever work, because it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel authentic. It's like, well, I don't want to go out of my way. I like, going to them seems more personable.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. You're absolutely right. Any time that we're going to engage with a new audience, right? Whether it be ethnically, culturally, socially, economically able, disabled, we think of it through the lens of who out there has a voice, who out there is respected, who out there will have the same mindset of, if we go to you, will you listen to what we have to say, and then you listen to us, and then let's start that conversation, and finding out who that individual or that small group of individuals who have that ear, right, within that given audience that we're trying to develop. Once those conversations start, again, it goes to what is the mutual benefiting factors that we can engage in. And again, we're talking about the arts, and the arts can, we've talked about economic development, we talked about healing, we've talked about, art for art's sake. And once you have that, then it's just like everything else, is developing that trust and that relationship.
Yeah.
The challenge that everybody runs into is, sometimes they talk over each other, right? Instead of taking that moment for reflection and pause and listen. And the other thing that often happens is that you try to force it, and when you force it, and usually you're trying to force it because you want things to go faster and hurry up. It's like dating. You got to start with 1 date, 2 date, 3 date. You don't go from a date 1 and into marriage, right? So
that's not my experience.
No, it does, So you got to take your time and develop that whole trust factor. And that's where it comes down to.
With as much as you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, like, what happens when you run out of bandwidth?
If I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me that. With that commercial that the world runs on Dunkin', Mike runs on Dunkin', keep the caffeine going and I'll be all right. But I will say this, when I took the position at the Noyes many moons ago, it's been 18 years now. I told the board of directors at that time, and it has not changed. When I stop having fun, I'm done. Right? I'll keep going like the Energizing Bunny, as long as I'm having fun.
Sure.
And every day is a challenge. You're trying to do this and do that, and get rejected on a grant, or that relationship didn't work the way you wanted. But at the end, when you still have the passion, you're still having fun, you keep going. But when that's gone, no hard feelings, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I still got some years of fighting in me.
Still got some fire there. Now I was going to ask you, when do you find time to paint? I know you've got like a big show coming up.
Yeah, I have a nice show coming up over at Rowan's Arts and Innovation Center down in downtown Millville. It's nice to be, go back home and where the roots were at.
Yeah, it's a cool space.
It is, and Jackie Sandra is running that. She was actually my ceramics professor when I was at Rowan. And and I watched her daughter Daisy grow up, and she's watched my oldest grow up as well. So it's nice, again, long relationships and stuff. But I paint in cycles, right? So I have about 25 new paintings that over winter break that I spent 3 weeks just nonstop, painting. It's in between my classwork and running the museum and stuff. And I haven't picked up a brush since end of January.
Mm.
I probably won't get into the studio. We'll start painting again till end of June, and then I'll do it for like 2-3 months.
Mm.
And I'll produce like 60 new pieces a year in that ebb and flow type of environment.
Yeah.
Again, because I don't want to force it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah.
Where do you find the inspiration for your pieces, for your painting?
A lot of my stuff I've been doing right now has been on. I've been really attracted to like old buildings, collapsed factories, even like if I just finished a painting, in January. There's this old tractor, big giant backhoe type of thing. I don't know tractors, but big giant yellow machine, right? Right there on 206, heading past the cranberry bogs, before Route 541. It's been sitting out in the field, and I
It's
drive
like where that old house used to be.
Yeah. And I drive by it all the time. Like, that thing is so cool. Look at the patina, and and I finally one day I just drove up the farm field and photographed it, and I'm like, the painting. And when I look at like things like that and old buildings, I think about a couple of things, right? I think about mortality a lot, to be honest with you. I think about when your time is up, what happens, what do people remember, what are the stories, and same thing with that tractor in the old building. Like, who was that drove that thing every day? Who lived in that old building? Who worked in that warehouse? What was their life like, and what did they contribute? And then then I respond to the visceral of colors and textures and stuff. But it's much deeper for me than the average observer is going, oh, that's really cool building. But for me, it's much deeper, and I don't need to like personify it out there and pound on my chest about it. I know, and that's all.
Sure.
At the end of the day, all that matters. Share it with you. Well, now I'm sharing the podcast, so that everybody will know. But that's what I think about.
Yeah.
And for me, it's an escape from reality. It's an escape from the spreadsheets. It's an escape from the writing the grants and the budgets and everything else. And think about just actually not think and just respond to an image and play with paint all day.
Do you, when you're painting, do you find that like when to stop, or is it one of those things where it's just like I'm in it, and like if I get interrupted, I'm going to be really pissed about things?
Yeah. I know when to stop. Then I find myself like a year later looking at something like, why did I do that? And then I'll pick up the paintbrush again and do something to it. But I work on at least 6 to 12 pieces at a time.
Okay.
Right. So I'm not one, and again, it's not like better or worse. It's just my approach of, I don't do start to finish a piece. I just don't have that attention span. There's no way. So like when I'm like ready, to go paint, I'll think my different sizes and shapes, the imagery I'm going to do. And sometimes I'll start something for 5 minutes and put it down and not pick it up for another week. And other times I'll work on something for 3-4 hours and then start another piece. And I just let the energy flow. I let my response to what I'm doing flow. And just, just again, I try not to force it.
Yeah.
So it seems to work out pretty well sometimes.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find that the things that I was somewhat resistant to when I was younger are the things that I'm a little bit more attracted to now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's especially true of like I really want to get into oil painting, because
Sure.
I've always like held that at arm's length because, man, I do not have patience. I'm sort of an instant gratification kind of guy when it comes to the arts a little bit. Is there something like that for you? Like, is there stuff that you might have been hesitant to approach originally, or when you were younger, and then now you're embracing that a little bit more?
Well, I still resist carrots and broccoli.
Broccoli's great, man.
I just
you
can't
gotta
do
get
it.
broccoli's really good.
My wife's still trying to put it on a plate for me, but no. I've always been a studio artist, and I go back and forth between. Most of the work I do now is oil and acrylic, right? And then my response to the type of work I like, is much different now than what I care to look at even 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, right? But as far as an application in the art space, I wish I had time to just experiment more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just play without, because I think my biggest challenge is that I still, at the end of the day, treat a painting like a grant or a budget proposal. It's got to be nice and neat package, and it has to fit in a nice and neat way and present and stuff. And I don't play. I mean, earlier I said I play with the paint and stuff. I do as I'm developing it, but I don't just sit there and let me just see what this would do, and let me see what that would do, and because I think a lot of it has to do because of my time in the studio is so limited that I feel like I'd be wasting my time. I think also too I'd be frustrated as anything if I started screwing things up and making mud.
Yeah.
But and that's something I share with my students all the time. It's just play, embrace, learn from me. Wish you had more time to play, dabble, and not take yourself so seriously all the time.
Have you ever talked to Heather Deegan Hires about that?
Yeah, Heather's another one of those community arts individuals that we've partnered with over the years, and I love how she just experiments.
Yeah.
Her and Ruben with the photography and the paintings, they're constantly like trying to, push the envelope, see what it does. I saw her in an event just the other night, and they were showing me stuff, and she explained something with, I think you were there with the coffee filters.
Yeah, with the bubble wrap and the coffee filters.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, what? I just, I'm a painter, right? Heather's an artist.
Yeah.
She can dabble in all these other spaces, and I'm thinking like, coffee filters for me are only for one thing: making coffee, right? So watching how someone like Heather, plays and experiments is really gratifying to see. Sure.
I love her stuff, and I think the first time I talked to her about it was actually at a maple syrup event at Stockton. Was it last year, I guess? And she's like, "You just gotta do it. Just put paint down. Just play." And I'm like, "Oh man, I don't know if I can.
I don't know if I can
do that.
Play.
And I don't know if it's part of that because I'm similar where I can, I do the art stuff. I talk about the art stuff, but man, I love creating events and schedules and structure for things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wonder if that's where that whole is like, well, if I gave up that structure, everything's
figure
gonna
out
fall
how to
apart.
do that. Let me know.
Yeah, I'm gonna. We'll start a support group about that. I'm jealous of that, and I think it's actually that sort of stuff is the stuff that I'm most attracted to as an artist because it's like I'm never gonna get there. I'm never gonna be
it's not
that.
happening.
Yeah,
it's not happening.
I love what you do because there is no possible way that I'm ever going to be able to replicate that.
Yeah.
That's really special.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you hit the nail on the head. Structure is you and I are right from the same cloth when it comes to that. Structure. My wife hates it when I have a day off because I ask, what's the agenda for today? What's the budget for the day? What are we doing? What's the return of our investment? Spending time and getting this stuff done. It's like we're just going food shopping.
Yeah. My wife doesn't want to talk about that. It's just like so what do we got planned for this week? Because she's a fairly structured person too, but she's like I don't want to think about that right now. I just
Right.
want to do what I got to do. Like this is my time to just
Right.
chill and embrace being. And I'm like, well, if I don't know exactly what's going to happen at 10 o'clock tomorrow, I might have a meltdown.
Yeah. If I don't know what's happening after this podcast, I'm going to be having a meltdown.
Yeah. So like getting back to, I guess, structure, like you've created how many nonprofit organizations?
Quite a few over the years. Yeah.
So like you just like, oh, I got nothing else to do today, I'm gonna create another nonprofit.
Well,
like how do they like how do those come into fruition?
So they come, and what's really nice is when you help create them, and then you like give them to somebody else to run and manage, right? And which is cool. Setting up, my first nonprofit was helping set up the Riverfront Arts Center in Millville back in 2000, and then a series throughout the years, and then with the Ducktown CDC, and again, it's I think about alignment a lot, and at the end of the day, I live and breathe the arts and what the arts can do. Again, economically, socially, health-wise, health and well-being wise, and that's the mission that has been set forth by Fred and Noyes.
Yeah.
Establishing when they established the museum in '83. It's something when you think about and you bring education into it and civic responsibilities. That's what Stockton takes very seriously, and all of those things align. And I'm blessed every day that I can go in the space of the arts and bring together. And if I have one skill set. If I only had one skill set, it would be bringing people together, and then and then helping to provide that structure, and then let them do their thing.
Yeah.
And Stockton has really been a good friend of mine, personally and professionally, and as well as the museum, and think about all the stuff that you and I have done over the years, and think about the different partnerships and collaborations that have engaged. And at the end of the day, when you see a smile on an individual's face, regardless of what path or journey they're on and what the arts have done for that individual, hey, that's that.
Yeah, that's it for me.
That's it.
Yeah.
I remember a couple months ago, a 12-hour day, and I'm like really tired. I have a new instructor for this access program over at Kramer Hall. And I'm like, all right, let me go check on her, and the Arc of Atlantic County was there, and I'm like, God, I'm tired. It was a bad day. I think I was rejected by 2 grants that day, and I walked in and watching these individuals who have cognitive disabilities just smiling and laughing, playing with clay and paint, and it's like within like 5 minutes, my blood pressure was down. I was smiling. I was like, this is what it's all about. This, at the end of the day, what it's all about. And, just being mindful of that. And, you have to remind yourself from time to time.
Yeah. I'm always touched by those, like the first time you meet them, I can never do that. That's not like, I'm not an artist. Like, I don't do things. And then they make marks on paper, and they're like, "Why aren't you doing this all the time?" You know, like Heather, right? Yeah. So Heather recently just started doing watercolors, and she's like picked up like this. There's some instructional TikToks or whatever online, and she's been following that and doing all these botanical watercolor things, and she's like, "Oh, I want to get more." I'm like, "Well, I can introduce you to Laura Bethman." It's like wow, like now I can like I'm giddy to like introduce you to the next step of this, and that's just like when I'm having like a garbage day, and I'm like why am I doing art club? Like it doesn't like it just feels like a lot of work, and some days, and then like I do the life drawing thing because it definitely just gives me an opportunity at least twice a month to draw.
Right.
And somebody comes in and it's like it's their first time drawing, or it's a model who's the first time modeling, and like everybody's just enjoying
that moment,
that process. Yeah, it's not about the product, it's about the process.
Yeah, it is about the process. I mean, I teach over at Stockton, the Arts and Disabilities program, right? And my biggest takeaway with them is, we focus on artists with disabilities and the audience and that intersection, but it's about the process, and they do a lot of projects, hands-on, and I said, I'm not grading you. I don't care if you turn it into a Picasso or not. I want you to put 110% into it. And if it looks like something that came out of a recycling container, but you put your heart and soul into it, that's all that matters, and when you have that moment, that's that sense of presence that you're talking about, when when you get enthusiastic of watching somebody, picking up the pencil for their first time, or that model is just, really capturing and exciting everybody on the pose. And those simple moments is what you got to, think about.
Yeah. And I think that gets to sort of I don't want to say this in a derogatory way, but I think it gets to our baser nature as a species, is that like those are the first ways that we communicate,
right?
Is through pictographs and symbols and like getting an opportunity to express yourself in that way is something special. I said to somebody the other day, it's like, just make the mark on the paper. Right. Like your life is going to be so much better for having done that.
Right.
Like, and I mean, that's something that we want to, like, with our club. That's it, really. Right. That's like, I've written a couple of fancy mission statements, but it's really just like, just make a mark, man.
But what you've done is think about this though. It's more than just a mark. There's a follow up to that. Make the mark, but don't be judged.
Yeah.
Right. There's no need for you to be validated. Right. Just make the mark, enjoy the process, and go from there. But we get stuck in the arts, and you think about the sports and everything else of, metrics and measurements and ROI and, stuff that, we deal with on a day-to-day basis. But when you go back to what you're saying, that whole basic root of everything, just make the mark. Yeah. And play. Yeah. You and I don't have time to play.
We're find time sometimes to play. I've discovered that I like alcohol markers. Not just for drinking, kids. Yeah. I've been playing with them and trying to layer them like watercolors, and this is the first, I guess, feeling of discovery that I've had in a long time. Sure. And that's been unique, Now,
do you get frustrated with it?
I get frustrated that I don't have as much time. Like I had to put it down, and like I know the next 2 weeks are going to be nuts, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back to it. But I think once the festival's behind, and Teen Arts is behind, like I think I'll have a little bit more time to do that.
Teen Arts, 1,600 kids, unique souls coming to downtown.
I'm frightened and excited about this. Yeah. I think it's great. I've been able to experience it like stage managing for the Eagle before, but I've never been like an instructor or anything, and I'm so jazzed for it, and
it's always a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I
love it. When you look at the youth and how they respond to it, how Teen Arts, and just it's amazing.
Yeah. That's really cool. Well, I think that's pretty good.
You did pretty good without Sam.
I did pretty okay.
Right? Not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Do you want to hit the record button and for real?
Yeah. No, thanks so much for being on. I really appreciate that. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Like you were like more than just like I've brought this up to you before, but like that first meeting with Main Street was really a turning point for me, because like here I was. So I'm talking to Sue Murder in Breadheads. I had just had a 5-minute conversation with John Bradley about like, what if we do this and create a sort of art club in town and get more artists to come to downtown. And then Sue's grabs Cassie by the shoulders like, you should talk to Don. He's starting an art club. And the next thing I know, I'm at this Main Street meeting, and I've got like Annette and was it Jerry?
Yep.
And you and I forget who else was it. Saskia,
yeah.
Yeah. And Cassie, and you turn to me, it's like, well, what are you gonna do? And this was like right before
Told you I was blunt.
I know, and I was like, well, all right, well, this is my opportunity to say these are the things that Art Club is going to get behind.
Right, cool.
And I have been lucky enough to like, so I'm an idiot and I think smart at the same time. Is I will tell somebody that I'm going to do something, and that means that I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
You know,
imagine that.
It's weird.
It's a skill
It's
set
like,
that's lost nowadays.
man, it's having it, like serendipity was saying that we were going to do an April. We'll do the April. We're going to do a flower power thing in April for that first COVID arts thing. And having March just happen, and they cancel Third Thursday because everybody's in quarantine. And then I find out that a friend of mine up on Long Island is doing church services through this platform called StreamYard. And it's like, well, maybe we can just do it like this.
Pivot.
Just pivot. And that whole period of time, like, set the path.
Right.
And so thank you for putting it to me in the meeting.
And you did. It's
And I've always appreciated your honesty with me. Like, even when I have like not the best ideas, or I get a little bit too romanticized about this whole situation, and I know it. I really appreciate you being honest.
It's about relationships built on.
Yeah.
It's that whole trust. Am I going to give a shout out real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, do it.
So I got to give a shout out to somebody really special who's been. You've been with me through the thick and thin of all this in Hamilton and elsewhere. But somebody who's been thick and thin since I started this whole art business is my wife, Natalie. 32 years coming up. I think I got that right, honey. 32 years coming up next March. But so without her and believing in me and giving me the space to follow my dream, I don't give a chance to shout her out as much, but her and the kids have, that's how my standard of I hold myself accountable every single day so that I can look them in the face and say, I'm working hard and I'm trying. So thank you for that.
Well, I think that is the perfect way to end this podcast.
Awesome.
Mike,
Thank you
so
Take
much.
Care.
Yeah. See ya, people.